number 10 of Sex in the Watchtower, because it's about to get crazy up in here. This video is not going to be safe for work. Consider this your explicit language advisory. You might think that Jehovah's Witnesses, with their modest dress and grooming and rigid gender roles and draconian rules about just about everything, you might think they would be pretty vanilla when it comes to sex. Nope, not true. They do have some really heavy-duty restrictions on their sexuality, as you'll see, but they hear a lot, and I mean a lot, of explicit sexual discussions at the meetings and in their literature. See, Jehovah's Witnesses get a unique blend of sexual repression and way TMI. At the same time, they aren't allowed to do anything even remotely sexual, including fantasies and thoughts, but they seem to talk about it in their literature and from the platform all of the time. Seriously, they talk about sex like way too much. Now, today's discussion starts with a booklet, which has no date attached, according to Watchtower Online, so I'm just going to stick it in Y2K because I can. Ready or not, here we go. This booklet is called Unseen Spirits. Do they help us or do they harm us? I'm going to say neither. We have already learned that it was sexual attraction that led some of Jehovah's Spirit sons to leave his service, with the result that they became rebels. Yeah! What? I mean, how would this even work? Spirits and humans are supposed to be like two totally different things. Totally different. How would a spirit even know what sexual attraction is? Like, are snails sexually attracted to cats? Are human beings sexually attracted to sheep? Wait, that's a bad example. Anyway, do spirits even have gender? According to witnesses, all angels at least are male. So I don't actually know if that extends to demons too. But y'all, there's not one shred of actual evidence that spirits exist at all. Do we find sexual immorality connected with the worship of unseen spirits today? In some places, it is not unusual to hear of women in bed feeling the presence of an unseen person to the point of their becoming sexually stimulated, as though such unseen person were having relations with them. My. So, a boy can have wet dreams, but a girl can't, because that's really all they're talking about here. When a male has a wet dream, it's normal and natural, though he should still feel ashamed, according to Watchtower, because he should be able to control his thinking or whatever. But the exact same thing, if it happens to a female, is here attributed to unseen spirits or demons. Just wow. In other parts of the world, sterile women often consult the unseen spirits by means of a spirit medium in order to find a remedy for their sterility. But at times they are required to have sexual relations with the doctor as part of their cure. Oh my. Y'all, if your doctor requires you to have sex with them as part of the cure, then you're not at an actual doctor's office and you should probably call the police. You know, I love how they've managed to tie together spirit mediums and doctors, though. That's pretty slick. But then, if your witch doctor screws you and solves your fertility problem, then seems like maybe you never actually had a fertility problem at all. Sounds to me like maybe your husband did, but that's none of my business. Our next example is another undated gem, according to Watchtower Online, from the book True Peace and Security. How can you find it? I kind of feel like this book was published back in the late 80s, early 90s, but again, I'm putting it where I want to. It's chapter 13. It's entitled, Your View of Sex. What difference does it make? Well, I mean, if you're watching all the sex, your viewpoint is pretty important. I mean, what are they doing in there? If you're watching from, say, outside the window, you probably can't see as well as you'd like. And if you're watching from the privacy of your living room on your TV screen, you can probably see pretty well. If you're watching from a chair beside the bed where the thing's happening, you probably need professional help because that's kind of creepy. Sexual relations between man and woman then clearly have divine approval. Oh my. Well, don't get too excited because conditions apply. But does God approve of unrestrained sex? Well, I guess it depends on the kind of restraints you're using. I guess. Maybe. Would this bring the greatest enjoyment in life? Yes. Would it result in true peace and security for us and for those around us? Wait a minute. Why would any reasonable person expect their sex life to provide true peace and security? And how come the peace and security of those around us is in any way dependent on our sex lives? Like, this is bogus. Sex is just as subject to misuse as our other human functions. Eating is good and essential for life, yet gluttony can impair health and shorten one's life. Sleep, too, is vital, but an excess robs life of accomplishment and can even weaken the body. Where are they going with this? Just as real enjoyment of life does not result from gluttony, drunkenness, and laziness, so too it does not result from unrestrained use of one's sexual powers. This sentence has short-circuited my brain. I don't... Rebooting. Oh my God. First of all, who are they to judge an individual's real enjoyment? I mean, admittedly, gluttony, drunkenness, and laziness isn't any way to go through life on a daily basis, but in moderation, it sounds like a fantastic vacation to me. I'm just saying. I mean, think about it. What do you do on vacation? Second of all, sexual powers? What are we, superheroes now? This is so bizarre. It is so bizarre. And I love how they're comparing having sex, which is a totally normal human activity, to gluttony, drunkenness, and laziness, as if sexuality is totally bad. And I truly wonder if all this talk about restraints is an Easter egg, or if the writers here are genuinely so naive that they have no idea how this sounds. But it's hilarious. As we have observed, the Bible also expresses God's judgment against fornicators. Exactly what is fornication? How could any Jehovah's Witness in the world not know the answer to this? While the Bible's use of this term can include sexual intercourse on the part of unmarried persons as well as adultery, it often has a much wider meaning. The word for fornication that was used when recording the statements of Jesus and his disciples is the Greek word porneia. It is drawn from the same root as the modern term pornography. Oh. It must be very bad then. In Bible times, porneia was used in referring to a broad range of unlawful sexual relations outside marriage. And if you were a Jehovah's Witness during the 1970s, it also referred to any kind of fun sex inside marriage. Porneia involves the grossly immoral use of the genital organs of at least one human, whether in a natural or perverted way. Also, there must have been another party to the immorality, a human of either sex or a beast. Okay, grossly immoral is just a little vague. I mean, what does that mean? And if something is grossly immoral, wouldn't that automatically cover the natural versus perverted question? Or is there a just kind of sorta immoral option? I mean, this is way too subjective when you consider that this is the yardstick being used by the elders to determine whether people get to keep their families and their support systems or not. I mean, it's kind of a big deal when you look at it that way. One committing fornication does indeed harm and encroach upon the rights of others. How do you figure? I mean, as long as both parties are willing, consenting participants who aren't married to someone else at the time, I don't see how this encroaches on anyone's rights. In fact, I think the witnesses are the ones encroaching here. Stay out of my bedroom, Watchtower. This is true, for example, of couples who live together without the benefit of legal marriage. Why do they do it? Frequently, it is so that they can abandon the union whenever they please. They do not give their partner the security that responsible marriage ought to bring. Nope, sorry. This is crap. There are a million reasons why people might live together without getting married first, but there's something called common law marriage, which basically means that the people can't actually abandon the union whenever they please, depending on where they live. Same-sex couples live together without being married because they might not be allowed to get married. Other couples might want to take a test drive before investing the rest of their life, or at least in theory. Maybe they can't afford insurance and they're still young enough to be on their parents' insurance. Maybe they lose their trust fund or something if they get married before a certain age. Maybe they just don't want to get married. Or maybe they want to make sure marriage is what they want before they jump into it. This is actually a much smarter choice than leaping blindly into a marriage at 19 years old with the only available single brother or sister in the congregation because you want to experience sex before Armageddon. And how is this any of Watchtower's business? But if both persons enter the relationship willingly, are they still harming and encroaching on the rights of others? Yes, definitely so. There are many effects of the actions of fornicators that do encroach on the rights of others. For one thing, anyone participating in fornication shares in damaging the other person's conscience, as well as any clean standing that one may have had with God. Look, every single individual person is responsible for their own conscience and their own behavior. There is no way for me to know what will or won't bother your conscience, so there is no way I can be responsible for your guilt feelings. This is bullshit. Okay, sure, indoctrinated people may feel horribly guilty when they have sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend before marriage. That's their own fault and their own responsibility. They cannot and should not blame the other person for that. They're the ones that decided to do it. Besides that, God's not real, people. This is all a big mind fuck. The fornicator destroys the other person's opportunity to enter marriage with a clean start. I'm sure they're referring to virginity here, but this is so dumb. Y'all, virginity is so highly overrated. I mean, I would much prefer to marry someone who knows what the hell they're doing and isn't going into the relationship with all kinds of unrealistic expectations. I mean, the start of a marriage is just as clean and worthy when both parties have some experience, okay? I should know. I've done it twice now. He likely brings disrespect, reproach, and distress on members of the other person's family, as well as his own. This is not any of their business. What happens between two consenting adults is absolutely not something the family needs to be concerned with. It isn't the congregation's business, or the elder's business, or anyone else not in the bed at the time, unless they're already married to someone else, and that's a little bit more complicated. But it's still not their whole family's business who they have sex with. He may also endanger the mental, emotional, and physical health of the other person. Dreadful sexually transmitted diseases such as the deadly AIDS are often linked with sexual immorality. Oh my. Look, if you don't have AIDS, then it is not possible for you to transmit it to your partner, okay? So you're not endangering the other person at all if you're both clean and healthy and not repressed and brainwashed to think sex is worse than cold-blooded murder. The average Jehovah's Witness youth is not going to have AIDS or syphilis or gonorrhea or whatever because they're not even allowed to touch themselves. How would they have contracted it in the first place? What of homosexuality? As we have seen, this practice is covered by the word porneia, fornication, used by Jesus and his disciples. The disciple Jude used that word when referring to the unnatural sex acts of the men of Sodom and Gomorrah. Homosexuality there caused degradation that produced a loud cry of complaint. Who's complaining? And to whom? And it led to God's destruction of those cities and their inhabitants. Has God's view changed since then? No. Okay, well then tell me why he supposedly created homosexuals. Did he make a mistake? But wait, I thought he was omnipotent, omniscient, perfectly perfect in every way. So how is that even possible? I know that witnesses teach that homosexuality is a choice, which it isn't, by the way. It's something people are born with. And the way our society treats gay people, y'all, I'm not real sure why the Jehovah's Witnesses think anybody would make a choice to be homosexual. But whatever. God made gays and then killed them for it, according to the Bible. You know, he's kind of a dick. 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10, for example, lists men who lie with men among those who will not inherit God's kingdom if they continue such a practice. Also, describing the results to persons who dishonor their bodies in uncleanness, going after flesh for unnatural use, the Bible says that they became violently inflamed in their lust toward one another. Males with males, working what is obscene and receiving in themselves the full recompense which was due for their error. Such persons not only fall under God's condemnation, but they also receive a recompense of mental and physical corruption. Today, for example, there is a disproportionately high rate of syphilis, AIDS, and other sexually transmitted diseases among homosexuals. You know, I'm not sure this is entirely accurate. I know it was at one time true that there were more STDs in the gay population, but I think that was largely due to the fact that people didn't know about STDs at the time. much less how to prevent them. And most homosexual activity had to happen in secret to avoid getting killed for it. I also object to the subtle insinuation here that gay people deserve to get STDs and that they're somehow mentally corrupt. Because, y'all, that is not true. Some of the healthiest and most lovely people I know are gay. The high moral standards of God's word protect us from such harm rather than deprive us of something good. I just don't know what to say to this. It's such bullshit. I mean, okay, the Jehovah's Witnesses do not, in fact, have high moral standards. They have draconian and needlessly restrictive rules because they want to maintain control of their membership, keep them dollars rolling in. That's all it's about. The whole thing. If they actually did have high moral standards, they wouldn't be protecting child molesters or providing loopholes in the Elders Manual whereby if a man commits adultery or fornication and keeps it quiet for a while, he won't be punished. Look it up. It's there. They aren't moral people. If they were, morals wouldn't be solely about sex to them. If one's mate becomes guilty of fornication, does this automatically break the marriage tie? No, it does not. The innocent mate can decide whether to forgive or not. Where divorce is decided upon, the Christian's recognition of secular authority will cause him to dissolve the marriage legally, doing so on a truthful basis. When the proceedings are finalized, remarriage is allowable, but the scriptures counsel that any such marriage should be only to another Christian, one who is really in the Lord. So how exactly does your mate become guilty of fornication? That's a really weird choice of words. So when they say really in the Lord, that means another Jehovah's Witness, of course. So what happens if the innocent mate in this scenario decides to forgive the adulterer, but the adulterer doesn't want to be forgiven? Well, if the cheater decides to get a legal divorce anyway, then it's not considered a scriptural divorce, and neither party is scripturally free according to the Jehovah's Witnesses. So technically, the innocent mate would then have to remain single forever, depending on the elder body in their congregation. I know people in this situation, y'all. This is an unconscionable level of control they have. It's crazy. What if the laws of a land do not allow for any divorce, even on the ground of sexual immorality? An innocent mate in such case might be able to obtain a divorce in a country where divorce is permitted. But then you would go home and your divorce wouldn't be recognized legally, so why would you bother to do this again? Seriously, in some countries, this could be extremely dangerous. Circumstances, of course, may not allow for this, but some form of legal separation may be available in one's own country and could be sought. Whatever the case, the innocent mate could separate from the guilty one and present definite proof of scriptural ground for divorce to the overseers in the local congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. Right. Because the overseers' opinions are what's really important in this scenario. What if that person were later to decide to take another mate? The congregation would not act to remove him as an adulterer if he provided the congregation with a written statement containing a vow of faithfulness to the present mate and an agreement to obtain a legal marriage certificate if the former marriage should be dissolved either legally or by death. Wait, hold up. Y'all, are they basically allowing sex and cohabitation outside marriage here? Is this for real? If they can do this in some countries where divorce is against the law, then why is it so wrong everywhere else? This is nuts! Nevertheless, the individual would have to face whatever consequences might result as far as the world outside the congregation is concerned. For the world does not generally recognize that God's law is superior to human laws, and that human laws have only relative authority. Well, right here it is. I hope y'all realize what a big deal this is. Okay, first, they're saying that if the person follows the advice they've just gotten from the Watchtower and then they get arrested and stoned to death or whatever, Watchtower doesn't care and is not going to lift a finger to help anyone. Great. But it's that last line that's critical in light of the child sex abuse scandal and their failure to report to the authorities and protect their children. God's law, and by this they mean the Jehovah's Witness rules, are superior to human laws, and human laws have only relative authority. Wow. Y'all, this is how they justify all of it. I really hope you can see how wrong and immoral and unethical this is. Please tell me you see it. Because of the emphasis placed on sex today, many young folks find that their desire for sexual satisfaction is aroused even before they are in a position to marry. As a result, some of them seek pleasure through self-stimulation of their sexual parts. This is masturbation or self-abuse. Is it a proper or wise practice? You've got to be kidding me. First of all, young folks having sexual desires before they're ready for marriage is not the result of any emphasis placed on sex today. If that were true, then Jehovah's Witnesses would be primary offenders because they talk about sex so explicitly and so often in their literature and at their meetings. Oh my God. But the truth is, adolescents have sexual desires because biology, because it's normal. Because hormones are real, unlike Jehovah or Satan or Watchtower's authority. Secondly, I would argue that almost all people masturbate at one time or another. It's not abusive unless you're actually harming yourself. Is it a proper or wise practice? Well, define proper. Okay, is it proper to masturbate at the dinner table or in the cereal aisle at the grocery store? No, it is not. Is it proper to masturbate in the shower or the privacy of your own room? Sure. Wise? Is it wise? Sometimes yes. If it clears your mind, eases your stress, makes you feel nice, then yeah, I would say sure. Why should I care? The scriptures counsel, deaden therefore your body members that are upon the earth as respects fornication, uncleanness, sexual appetite, hurtful desire, and covetousness. Is one who practices masturbation deadening his body members as respects sexual appetite? On the contrary, he is stimulating the sexual appetite. These articles are really full of crap today. All right, I want you to think about a time that you were really, really horny. What is the only way to alleviate that? I mean, the easiest and fastest way to think about something else to mentally change the subject is, that's right, an orgasm. Stimulating the sexual appetite would actually involve prolonging the feeling of arousal, delaying orgasm, repressing the sexual urges until they explode from sheer pressure. That's what the witnesses do by forbidding masturbation and sexual desire at all, while at the same time talking about sex literally all the time. This is not healthy. The Bible urges that one avoid the thinking and conduct that lead to such problems, replacing them with wholesome activity, and that one cultivates self-control. When earnest effort is put forth to do this, such self-abuse can be avoided, with benefits mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. How is this beneficial? What the Bible says respecting uncleanness, sexual appetite, hurtful desire, applies to all Christians, single and married. It is true that husband and wife have a scriptural right to engage in sexual relations with each other, but does this mean that they can throw off all restraint? Maybe it's just me, but the idea of Jehovah's Witness BDSM kind of grosses me out. Almost as much as the idea of restrained holy sex. Ew. The fact that God's word urges all Christians to cultivate self-control argues against such a view. The inspired Bible writer did not have to explain the natural way in which the reproductive organs of husband and wife complement each other. I don't know. I guess maybe they're referring to the fact that a penis will fit into a vagina? Okay. Homosexual relations obviously cannot follow this natural way. Why not? I mean, a penis will fit into an anus, won't it? Fingers fit into vaginas. Mouths fit everywhere. I'm just saying. So, male and female homosexuals employ other forms of intercourse in what the apostle refers to as disgraceful sexual appetites and obscene practices. Could married couples imitate such homosexual forms of intercourse in their own marriage and still be free in God's eyes from expressing disgraceful sexual appetites or hurtful desire? So I'm assuming they're trying to say that oral and anal sex are homosexual practices because they're not strictly penis to vagina intercourse. And maybe they would argue about the purpose of the particular body parts here, i.e. that the purpose of the penis and vagina are for sex and everything else is for another purpose and therefore shouldn't be sexual. But this argument is in fact laughably wrong. All right, first of all, the penis itself is a dual purpose organ. It's used for sex, sure, but it's also for things like peeing. And the vagina, well, okay, yeah, it's for sex, but it's also for menstruation and for childbirth. Now, those things alone blow the single-purpose argument right out of the water. If those organs are to be used only for sex, then men, you better learn to pee out of your ass. And women, I guess we're all having C-sections. Now, I don't know what we're going to do about Aunt Flo. Okay, time to move on. We're going to look at another book called The Secret to Family Happiness. Now, I know this was published sometime in the late 80s, but it was probably updated since then, and It too is undated on Watchtower Online. So I'm going to put it here because I can. This chapter is called Protect Your Family from Destructive Influences. And the headline here is God's View of Sex. Again, we have to make sure that Jehovah has an unimpeded view of all the kinky shit you're doing. Now, go confess to the elders, you filthy slut. This book actually has study questions because it was used for family studies, Bible studies with householders, and also a book study meeting, if I'm not mistaken. So this was being read and discussed out loud in front of a lot of people. Here's one of the discussion questions. What fine information on sexual matters is found in the Bible? The Bible makes it clear that there is nothing shameful about discussing sex in a proper context. In Israel, God's people were told to gather together, including their little ones, to listen to the reading aloud of the Mosaic Law. The law frankly mentioned a number of sexual matters, including menstruation, seminal emissions, fornication, adultery, homosexuality, incest, and bestiality. After such readings, parents no doubt had much to explain to their inquisitive youngsters. Menstruation is not sexual, y'all. I mean, it has to do with reproduction, but it's not like it's kink or something. And while I agree that parents should educate their children about sex, I don't think a group reading of the Mosaic Law or the Jehovah's Witness version of the same is appropriate. The way the witnesses discuss certain aspects of sexuality and inculcate certain views around gender roles and authority and submission, it's tantamount to grooming children to be victims of sexual abuse. This is not cool. Does such teaching lead children to commit immorality? On the contrary, the Bible teaches, by knowledge are the righteous rescued. Do you not want to rescue your children from this world's influences? One father said, ever since the children were very young, we've tried to be totally frank with them when it comes to sex. That way, when they hear other children talking about sex, they're not curious. There's no big mystery. Are children even capable of committing immorality? Seriously, children cannot consent to sex. They lack the fundamental ability to understand sex, so they are not capable of giving consent. Okay? Jehovah's Witnesses, however, have zero concept of consent. So they get this wrong every single time. If your children commit immorality in Jehovah's Witness parlance, in reality, they've likely been sexually abused. Or we're dealing with the situation of statutory rape. And do you notice the wording here? Do you not want to rescue your children from this world's influences? As if you don't see the need for rescue, there's something wrong with you. How could you not? Isn't that interesting? I agree that it's important for parents to teach their children about sex, but I think that this should be done in an age-appropriate way, and I disagree that children won't be curious about sex at any point, because children will always be curious about sex. Always. As noted in earlier chapters, sex education should start early. Wait a minute. Haven't they been decrying the fact that schools teach sex ed in other articles? When teaching little children to name body parts, do not skip over their private parts as if these were somehow shameful. Teach them the proper name for these. Right. Well, otherwise, how are they going to understand what the elders are asking them in their judicial committee meetings? As time passes, lessons about privacy and boundaries are essential. Jehovah's Witnesses wouldn't know a boundary if it bit them in the ass. Privacy and boundaries are essential, but Jehovah's Witnesses aren't allowed to have them. Wives must submit to their husbands, and everyone must submit to the elders and the Watchtower, or else. Hi, Carson. Oh, you don't believe me? Try refusing to answer their questions sometimes. See what happens. People in the congregations feel empowered to comment on your every move when you're a witness, your appearance, your relationships, your body, everything. Watchtower obviously thinks it's okay to dictate to people what they should do and feel in their most private of relationships and encounters. Surely they're not going to pretend here that they understand and encourage personal boundaries, because they don't. Born-in Jehovah's Witnesses are basically taught that we are not allowed to have boundaries. I don't know what they're talking about here. Preferably, both parents should teach the children that these parts of the body are special, generally not to be touched by or exposed to others, and are never to be discussed in a bad way. Couldn't much of what we read in these articles be considered discussing private body parts in a bad way? As children grow older, they should be informed as to how a man and woman come together to conceive a child. By the time that their own bodies begin to enter puberty, they should already be well aware of the changes to be expected. Such education can also help to protect children from sexual abuse. Or it could, if Jehovah's Witness children weren't also taught that they have to obey and submit to adults at all times, And also if the Jehovah's Witnesses actually listened when their children came to them to report abuse, but most of the time, as we know, they don't. Our final piece of insanity for today is from another famous Jehovah's Witness book. It's called You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. And the chapter we're going to be reading from is called Making a Success of Family Life. Also, you need to reason with children. It is not enough simply to tell youngsters, I don't want you to commit fornication because it is wrong. They need to be shown that it's their creator, Jehovah God, who says that such things as fornication are wrong. You got to make sure you shame them real good and give them as many hang-ups about sex as you can, parents. It's Jehovah. It's the eternal sky daddy who's always watching you, who supposedly made your penis in the first place, who's going to kill you at Armageddon if you use it. And also make sure that you teach them terms that no one else in the world really uses in daily life, so that they look like complete and utter cultists when they tell their acquaintances at school that they aren't allowed to date because committing fornication is wrong. But even this is not enough. Children also need to be helped to see why they should obey God's laws and how this will benefit them. For example, you might draw your youngsters' attention to the wonderful way a human baby is formed by the union of a man's sperm and a woman's egg and ask, don't you think that the one who made possible this miracle of birth knows best how humans should use their God-given powers of reproduction? Or you could ask, do you think that our grand creator would make a law to rob us of enjoyment in life? Rather, should we not be happier if we obeyed his laws? Dog babies and cat babies and horse babies and all kinds of animal babies come about in the same way. They do know that, right? Anyway, how do you know what's best for you? Shouldn't you just obey the men who say they're speaking for some all-powerful creator who may or may not actually exist? I mean, don't they know better than you what you should do with your crotch? I mean, who do you think you are making your own decisions about what feels good to you? Old men that you've never met and probably never will meet definitely know better than you do what you should do with your body. Definitely. Such questions can start your child reasoning on God's law governing the use of the reproductive organs. Welcome his views. If they are not what you desire them to be, do not get angry. Ha ha, freaking ha. Have they ever met any actual Jehovah's Witness parents? Try to understand that your child's generation has drifted a long way from the righteous teachings in the Bible, and then try to show him why his generation's immoral practices are unwise. I mean, seriously, this is so stupid. Your child might be asking totally legitimate, logical questions. They might just have an opinion that's different from yours. This has nothing to do with some vague idea of generational morality and everything to do with common sense. Perhaps you can draw your child's attention to specific examples of where sexual immorality has led to illegitimate births, venereal diseases, or other troubles. In this way, he is helped to see the reasonableness and correctness of what the Bible says. Tell them that sex is bad. Sex is wrong. Can someone please explain to me the concept of illegitimate births? Look, I understand that this term is used to refer to children born outside marriage or outside wedlock. They might be called bastards, but the birth itself is not illegitimate if the baby comes out, right? I mean, there is legitimately a baby afterward, isn't there? I think it's really funny how they're encouraging parents here to tell their children horror stories and gossip about others too, because what do you think they mean by specific examples here? Well, you know, Sister Jackson had sex outside marriage, disfellowshipped. And Brother McGillicuddy has VD. And now everybody gossips about him and treats him like dirt. You don't want to be like them, do you? If you get disfellowshipped, we're going to kick you out the house and shun you until you comply with our every command. So don't you see the reasonableness and correctness of our view? Basically, they're teaching their kids that they'll be unloved and abandoned if they have unapproved sex. This is completely nuts. Anyway, that's it for today. Tune in next time for episode number 11, when we'll continue our examination of weird Jehovah's Witness ideas about sex. Until then, I'm Sister Fister. This is crazy.